welcome to episode 2 of Vixen, a Black beauty and pop culture podcast. If you enjoy what you hear today, please leave a review anywhere you listen to podcasts. Today's episode is on Pam Grier, blaxploitation trailblazer and legendary actress. Now, let's start the show. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Vixen. I'm really excited about today's episode. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a poll on Instagram stories and I was asking if you guys wanted a blaxploitation film roundup or a blaxploitation actress roundup really, or if you would prefer a full Pam Grier episode. And the results were, I don't remember what they were, but I just remember they were unanimous. Everyone was like, full Pam Grier episode, blaxploitation later. So that is what we're going to do today. I'm still going to do the blaxploitation actress roundup, but we're going to start off with Pam Grier because I was writing the blaxploitation episode and I was like, Pam Grier is just too huge to be a part of a segment with other people. No shade to them, but she just like her life is so interesting on and off screen. Like there was no way that I would be able to, shorten her life into like a 10-minute segment. So I was like, nah, we definitely doing this full episode. I'm really, really excited about this one. And it is a bit of a long one. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. So let's get into Miss Pam Grier. Pamela Suzette Grier was born on May 26, 1949 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, to Gwendolyn Sylvia and Clarence Ransom Grier Jr. Her mother was a nurse and her father was a mechanic in the Air Force. The family went on to raise their 3 children, 2 daughters and 1 son, all over the globe due to Clarence's military career, but they did settle in Denver around the time Pam got to high school. In Denver, Pam was a beauty pageant contestant. She starred in many theater productions as a way to raise money for her college tuition, and then she ended up going to Metropolitan State College, also in Denver, which is now called Metropolitan State University. Unfortunately, Pam's early life was filled with a lot of trauma. This part is really hard to talk about, but at only 6 years old, she was sexually assaulted by 2 boys when she was left unattended at her aunt's house. While attending college, Pam was then again sexually assaulted through date rape. And of the incident, she said, "It took so long to deal with the pain of that. You try to deal with it, but you never really get over it. And not just me. My family endured so much guilt and anger that something like that happened to me." So that's just, awful that she was violated in that way at a young age. And then again, as a college student. In 1967, at age 18, Pam was accepted into UCLA's film program and she made the move to LA. She got a job working the switchboard at American International Pictures to get through school. While working there, she heard from an agent that New World Pictures, which was a studio that was known for their action films, was looking for a new actress. So the agent told her that Corman, who was the leader of this studio, was looking for someone who was kind of in your face. And the agent thought that Pam was just going to be perfect for that. He was like, she has that raw, unpolished, natural look. So he thought she was definitely going to book it. Pam went through a mass audition with the director Jack Hill, and the rest was history pretty much. In an interview with Port City Daily, he said, "The first time I met her was on kind of what they used to call a cattle call of actresses coming in, and I had them reading in groups because I had an ensemble film. It was called The Big Dollhouse, a women in prison story, which kind of started that genre, such as it was. She just came in, and the role was not specifically written for a Black character, but I was interviewing Black actresses. And yeah, this was before the actual blaxploitation movement started, but I just recognized something in her, even though she had never done anything in film at all, other than a walk-on in a Russ Meyer film. And she just had what we used to call authority, in my opinion, and presence. So I gave her a chance and she came through just great. And then after that, I wrote scripts specifically for her as I got to know her abilities and make the most out of them." So yes, of course, Jack ends up casting Pam in his film, The Big Dollhouse, in 1971. And then she stars in another movie of his called The Birdcage the following year. While filming The Big Dollhouse in the Philippines, director Roger Corman gave Pam the book An Actor Prepares, by whose name I'm going to fumble. I'm so sorry. Konstantin Stanislavski. Oh, God, that's not how you say it, but that's who wrote the book. She became obsessive over her lines and really went hard to embody the character. Everyone on set thought she was nuts for staying up late to memorize her lines, but she said her determination to humanize her characters is one reason why her films are so entertaining today. She said, It just made the movies more real and interesting. I was trying to bring as much to the roles as the audience could comprehend. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I would definitely argue, and somebody will probably try to argue with me on this, she's one of the greatest method actresses around. Like, when I used to see Pam Grier as a child, I did not even think she was an actress. I thought she was a superhero. Like, that's how good she is in her films. Like, it just, I don't know, she's always seemed larger than life to me. It never seemed like someone playing a role. She always was just like, I don't know how to describe it, but I really would argue she's one of the best method actresses of our time. Okay, so here's a little messy story for y'all. So it's unclear when Pam started to date UCLA basketball star Lou Alcindor, who we now know as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but they were in a full-blown relationship before he started publicly using his new name, which was in 1971. So I'm guessing they started dating around the time Pam stopped filming The Big Dollhouse. And after Kareem converted to Islam, he started to make marriage plans with Pam, but the submissive culture of his religion that women had to adhere to was just too much for Pam. So Pam was like, I'm not doing that. From what we've seen of Pam Grier, she's like the last woman I would ever expect to convert to Islam. So I can kind of imagine that this was just a little bit too much for her. In her book, Pam says she kind of knew it wasn't going to work out and she saw the writing on the wall, but she stuck around anyway, which women have a habit of doing. In her book, she says she was driving down the Pacific Coast Highway trying to tie her hijab, and it got tangled around her face, and she almost got into a crash. So she took this as an omen. So she's like, okay, this is a sign that I'm not supposed to be with this man. So one day she comes home, and Kareem's like, listen, there's a woman that has been arranged to marry me at 2 p.m. today. I'm going to marry her unless you convert and you marry me. He even said, once you become Muslim, you might appreciate another wife. So he's like, yeah, we're going to get married, and then I might have another wife too. So Pam was like, congrats, goodbye, grand opening, grand closing. And the relationship was just over. Kareem actually denies this. In a 2018 interview, he said, Pam and I parted as friends, and the reason we parted was not religion-based, but career-based. She was a thriving actress who needed to live in Los Angeles, and I was an NBA player living in Milwaukee. Like a lot of couples, we just couldn't make the long distance thing work. I mean, this sounds more plausible, I guess, but I'm not buying it because then he follows it up with this, and I quote, to set the record straight, I don't agree with a lot of things that the 20s Kareem believed. I no longer hold those orthodox views and haven't for decades. Christianity itself has gone through several reformations over the centuries. Do most people practice the absolute word of their holy books, or do they practice the spirit? While I admit to have done a few jerkish things in my 20s, let he or she who is without youthful jerkiness cast the first tweet. I don't know. I mean, obviously something happened between them to drive them apart. Maybe it wasn't as dramatic as the first story, but I mean, I don't know. That story's fun, so I'm just going to choose to believe that. After The Big Dollhouse, Pam signed a 5-year contract with American International Pictures, her former employer. So this is like a full circle moment for Pam. So they start off casting her in the Blackula sequel in 1972, and then Scream, Blackula, Scream, which I believe is like the second sequel. I don't know what you call the third installment of a movie, but yes. So this one came out in 1973. She then went on to act in films that we know her best for, Coffee, which was also 1973, and then Foxy Brown in 1974. I feel like this is what we all know Pam for, these two movies. In Coffee, Pam plays a nurse who seeks revenge on drug dealers. The movie was a box office smash, and it was the first blaxploitation film to have a female headliner. So she was truly a pioneer, y'all. That's crazy. Film critics said that Pam was an actress of beautiful face and astonishing form that possessed a kind of physical life missing from a lot of other attractive actresses. So these roles solidified Pam's role as the face of blaxploitation movies, where she played bold, larger-than-life women, like I said. Following these movies, Pam also had lead roles in Friday Foster and Sheba Baby, which both were made in 1975, and a host of other movies like Women in Cages, Black Mama, White Mama, Bucktown, and more. So blaxploitation films existed before Pam Grier, but she's the face of the genre really because of the way that she changed that narrative. So like I said, she was the first female lead in a blaxploitation film. Critics really didn't pay blaxploitation any mind. They didn't really take the genre serious. They said it perpetuated the white man stereotypes of Black people, which I feel like, can be argued. It's a little bit valid, but I mean, it doesn't take away from the art of those movies, in my opinion. So prior to Pam, women in blaxploitation films were usually victims or sex objects or very forgettable background characters. I watch a lot of blaxploitation films. I love the genre, so I definitely agree with this. Like, you don't really see the women play a really big part in the movies, and they usually end up getting killed or like something bad happens to them. So I definitely agree with that. We are going to talk more about blaxploitation films in a future episode, but the movies were really an over-exaggerated version of blackness with a few stereotypes thrown in. I love them, but it's true. It was like this until Pam came on the scene, typically portraying a woman out for blood, using sexuality in her favor instead of just for money or for a man. So if you guys have seen Coffee or Foxy Brown, I suggest you watch them if you haven't. You know that the opening scenes are both really dynamic. She knocked somebody's head clean off their shoulders in the beginning of both movies. Like, I think they both have like murder scenes in the beginning. She definitely kills somebody in the beginning of Coffee, I know for sure, but I think like Foxy might be a fight scene. Of course, this is the early 1970s, and many people were very taken aback by this, even outraged. In a 2011 interview with The Guardian, Pam said, "I had to bump heads with a lot of men in the industry. They were not comfortable with showing a progressive black female in an action role. As a strong woman, I was seen as a threat. I remember certain people saying, 'Oh, she's taking our job. She's castrating men.' As far as I was concerned, I thought, we don't need to walk behind you. We should walk beside you." So shortly after appearing in The Big Dollhouse, Pam signed with AGA, the Agency for Performing Arts, and they assigned her John Gaines, an agent who repped Steve Martin and Isaac Hayes at the time. I'm sure you guys have all heard of the casting couch. It's basically when actors do sexual favors in exchange for roles. And sometimes it happens on an actual couch, or it can happen at a dinner, or it can happen at a party. It really can happen anywhere, but it's definitely a big theme in Hollywood, especially at this time. So there's a book called Tales from the Casting Couch that has a lot of old Hollywood stories in it. If you're interested in that kind of stuff, I would definitely recommend you read that book. It's really cheap to buy it online right now. I think the last time I saw it, it was like $5 on Amazon. So yeah, definitely read that if you're interested. There's a lot of books out there about casting couch rumors and stories, and it's also one of the main themes in the Netflix show Hollywood. I don't know if y'all saw that. It came out, I want to say, earlier in 2020. 2020 has felt so long. Like, I can't tell if something happened last year or early this year. But yeah, so Ryan Murphy's show, Hollywood, is on Netflix. Casting Couch is one of the main themes of the show. So if you haven't seen it, watch it. I really enjoyed it. It's dramatic. It's very campy, but I loved it. And if you guys want any other book recommendations about the seedier side of Hollywood, definitely let me know. I will give you some. I love messiness. I love old Hollywood. I love messiness. So let me know. So anyway, I brought the casting couch up because John Gaines really protected Pam from having to deal with things like that and other unwanted sexual advances. Pam says that if she didn't have John, she would have a much different story than what she does, as he made sure that she didn't find herself in any potentially dangerous situations when she was going up for roles. So this just shows you like how rampant sexual harassment was in Hollywood, and it still is today. She says, "I called John my fairy godmother because of the way he protected and guided me. Go to meet someone on a business deal. Your lawyer, manager, agent, someone must always be with you. John always set those rules for me and created a comfort zone. He had just seen so much, so he knew. When he took me to clubs, someone would hand me a drink and he would say, 'Don't drink that. See the sediment at the bottom? You drink that and you won't remember the next week.' I became comfortable not accepting the invitations." Sammy Davis Jr. and even his wife, Altavis, invited me back and I declined. If I didn't have John, the agent, to go with me to the industry dinners or cocktail parties, I stayed away from them. I didn't really experience the sexual harassment you might think. I wonder if they saw my films and thought that I could probably beat them up. And you know I could, because I studied enough martial arts seriously that I probably could have really hurt someone. So if you guys listen to season 1 of Vixen, you know we have a running joke about Sammy Davis Jr. coming up on this podcast because he's come up at least 5 times. However, this time the mention is not very positive. Grier says that she experienced very little sexual harassment during her rise, and she kind of talks more about her experience with Sammy Davis Jr. in her book. She basically said that he became so sexually aggressive towards her at a party that she had to get Liza Minnelli and her husband to sneak her in their car and drive her away from the home. And he did all of this in front of his wife, like she said. And his wife, Altavis, if you listen to our Lola Falana episode in last season, that's the woman that was friends with Lola and met Sammy while he was dating Lola and then married Sammy Davis Jr. So just a little, fun background mess there. Pam was filming Coffee in 1973. She met comedian Freddie Prinze. The two instantly hit it off and became an item and even started talking about marriage. Both of their careers were on the rise at the time. Freddie was in a popular sitcom called Chico and the Man, and he was gaining a lot of traction with that. So Pam tried to get Freddie to sign with her agency so that they could look out for him as well. Freddie declined because he had received larger promises from bigger agencies, and these promises never came to fruition. And shortly after, Freddie ended up, unfortunately, spiraling out of control, developing really crazy spending habits, mostly on his entourage and the people around him, and he developed a cocaine habit. So at this time, they're still talking about marriage and having children, but Pam was kind of hesitant because he was doing drugs and he had just been diagnosed with depression. So this eventually became too much for Pam, so they broke it off, but they remained friends. She was actually one of the last people to speak to Freddie before his suicide in 1977. Here's a condensed quote from her book. I call him back, and he's at this hotel on Wilshire Boulevard, and he's in bad shape. His voice. There was so much sadness and disappointment. He was alone, almost ranting, talking about how he's lost his house. He doesn't know where his money is. He's got all these people, and he can't make his own decisions. He says, no, I'm so depressed. I have nobody to talk to. I have no friends. I have a gun, and I feel like I'm going to do something. I said, you can't hurt yourself. You have too much going for you, and once you sever those people out of your life and start over, you'll be fine. He wouldn't listen. I can't start over. I've lost too much. I think, how do I help this man who is so despondent and who has a gun? She didn't go to him, but she did wire him money that night. Days later, a friend told her that Freddie killed himself. In August 1975, Pam appeared on the cover of Miss Magazine, the publication that was led by very famous feminist writer Gloria Steinem. It was the first magazine of its kind, and Pam was the first Black woman to appear on it, which kind of jump-started a wave of Black feminism. Gloria was fascinated by Pam's defiance of gender stereotypes, and Pam credits Gloria as a great influence on her part of the feminist movement, and that her support later helped Pam speak out about the abuse she faced throughout her life. That same year, Pam appeared in 2 films, Bucktown and Friday Foster, and she was on fire throughout the rest of the 1970s. She had a really, really successful career at this time, and then she appeared in the films Drum, Grease Lightning, and Twilight of Love. So during her relationship with Freddie, Pam was introduced to comedian Richard Pryor, who was at the height of his popularity. The two began dating when they were both casted in Grease Lightning in 1977. So, those girls who basically act as the savior in the relationship they're in? That was basically the relationship that these two were in. It was a shit show, honestly, from the start. From the beginning, Pam was always trying to help fix Richard. It started with trying to help him learn how to read. And then she tried to help him buy a home. And then she was trying to help him get sober from his cocaine addiction, which he relapsed after being sober for 6 months. Shortly after, her doctor let her know that she had a buildup of cocaine residue around her cervix, something he referred to as an epidemic in Beverly Hills. I remember reading about this a couple years ago, and I was like, what? But apparently a lot of people would put cocaine on their penises to keep an erection, and they would have sex, and it would unfortunately go into the woman's cervix. So the doctor asked Pam, if Richard was doing that, but Pam wasn't sure. He asked if her mouth went numb when she performed oral sex on him, and she said that it did. So that showed, that he was doing that without her permission. So Pam confronts Richard about it, and he refused to use a condom and continued to do drugs. So this is basically the beginning of the end for these two. The real turning point of their relationship, though, was around the end of 1979, early 1980. Richard was cast in Stir Crazy alongside Gene Wilder. So he's filming it, and Pam gets a call saying, Pam, Richard's high, and we're like 10 weeks behind, and they're going to pull the plug on the movie. Everybody's mad. Everybody's upset. Everyone's afraid they're going to lose their job. Can you come down here and talk to him? I think you're the only person who can reach him. So Pam had recently been cast in the movie Fort Apache, and she was on her way to begin filming in the Bronx, but she decided to stop by the set of Stir Crazy before she left. So when she gets there, she watched Richard freebase cocaine, which is something we know is a really big part of Richard's story, unfortunately. And he promised to change, and she left. A few days later, she gets another call that Richard requested her presence, and she refuses to go this time, hoping that the tough love will change him once and for all. Days later, an inebriated Richard pours rum on himself and lights himself on fire, and he's running down the street. Police put him out, and that was pretty much the end for them. Their relationship was so dramatic and seemed so exhausting, but they never had like a set breakup like how she had with Freddie. I think they just like fell out of communication for a little bit, and then Richard just married his fourth wife while they were still together. So that, I guess, the marriage kind of ended their relationship. As the 1970s came to an end, blaxploitation films unfortunately went along with it. As their popularity decreased, Pam started to move into other genres. Fort Apache, the movie that she was filming while she was dating Richard, came out at the beginning of 1980, and then she appeared in Something Wicked This Way Comes in 1983. After that movie, Pam started to shift a little bit into theater and television. She made her theater debut in 1985 in Sam Shepard's Fool for Love, and she got rave reviews. And then she returned to film in 1988 in Above the Law. She did both of these while holding down a recurring role on Miami Vice, which lasted until 1989. And then she had another recurring role on a show I've never seen called Crime Story until 1988. She was really, really booked and busy again throughout the 1980s. Like the 70s were really good to Pam Grier, but the 80s were as well. I don't think anyone expected that because people really believed that she typecasted herself by being in blaxploitation films. Even though her career was still steady, unfortunately, Pam's health was on the decline. She was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in 1988 and was given 18 months to live. Through aggressive treatment, Pam miraculously beats cancer and gets back to her regularly scheduled program quickly so that they could not take the girl out. Cancer couldn't take her out, period. She had too much that, she was meant to be doing on this earth for cancer to take her out in the 80s. 1990s, however, did start out a little bad for Pam. Her younger sister passed from cancer in 1990, and that sister's son committed suicide very shortly after. Pam decided to throw herself into her work, and the decade continued to be good for her career-wise like the 70s and the 80s were. Now in her early 40s, she was a main cast member of the Showtime series Lynx. She was in a 1996 film called Escape from LA and continued to do theater. That same year, she landed a role in Mars Attacks, which is a Tim Burton film. I don't know if you guys have seen this movie. I saw it a long time ago, but it's basically like a very campy version of a sci-fi film. I think it's supposed to be a parody. It's funny. Tim Burton personally requested that Pam audition, and she actually turned him down because one of her dogs was dying from cancer. She turned down Tim Burton, y'all. Like, Pam is legendary. Anyway, so she said, and I quote, "I'm one of those people who can afford to say no. I aspire to be at that level, honestly. Like, I need to be able to afford to say no." Anyway, so they call her again. She refuses again. Then Tim Burton calls another time because he's so impressed by Pam's determination to not leave her dog. And he's like, "Okay, you've just auditioned. By you telling me no all those times, you've auditioned for the role," because the role she plays like a mother in the movie. So he's like, "Oh no, like this is," you can tell she really has that motherly bone in her body. So they were like, "That's your audition," telling us no. So they agreed to shoot around her schedule and held out until her dog passed. I don't think the movie did very well on a typical film performing scale, but it was pretty star-studded. Besides Pam, James Brown was in it, Jack Nicholson, Natalie Portman, Michael J. Fox. If you like camp movies, then you'll like this movie. The next year, Pam was riding around in LA with director Warrington Hudlin on their way to HBO headquarters to talk about some future projects. They get to a red light, and Warrington's like, "Hey, there's Quentin Tarantino. Let's say hi. I heard he's writing something for you." So Warrington leans out, and he says hi, and he introduces Pam, and Quentin Tarantino is starstruck by Pam Grier. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm writing something for you based on Rum Punch, the Elmer Leonard book. I'm going to send it to you as soon as I finish. You're badass. You stand up for women. You get up. You put your neck on the chopping block. You really try to set examples and show people that it's okay to win and it's okay to fight." So he's like totally fangirling over Pam right now. Pam is excited, but like she feels like he's laying it on a little thick. He's like, "Yeah." She's like, yeah. Just like, "I'll see it when you're done. I'm excited, but I'll see it when you're done." 6 months later, Pam gets a script in the mail, and it's for the 1997 film Jackie Brown. Quentin Tarantino was not bluffing. He was not hyping Pam up. He really was a big fan of hers, and the script was inspired by all her past blaxploitation films. Pam said that he had actually broken down each of her movies and referenced them all in the plot, which is really cool. She actually received 4 Best Actress nominations for this movie, the Golden Globes, the Screen Actors Guild, the Satellite Awards, and the Saturn Awards. So Pam just doesn't quit. I mean, this lady continues to be booked well into the 2000s. In the Lola Falana episode last season, I know I said something about how out of all the women I'd done episodes on, she was one of the only women to continue to work faithfully throughout the decades and not really missing a beat. But I have to say, Pam really gives her a run for her money. Throughout the 90s and the 2000s, Pam was on Martin, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Sinbad, The Cosby Show, Mad TV, The Wayans Brothers Show, and more. She also had a recurring role on The L Word. I remember that. And she was in Jawbreaker and Bones. That's not even everything, but this would be extra long if I listed all of the things that she was in at this time, and it's already a long episode, so I'm not going to do that. In 2010, Pam's memoir, which was one of my main sources for this episode actually, it's called Foxy, My Life in 3 Acts, was released. This was one of the first time Pam publicly discussed the sexual assault she'd experienced. With counsel from Gloria Steinem and Maya Angelou's story as inspiration, she goes really, really into depth about her trauma. She had this to say about it. It was like the lifting of a weight, and you will have a strength that you don't realize until you need to summon it. So we're in the late 2010s now, which, guess what, continued to be successful for Pam Grier. She was on Smallville, was in Larry Crown. She had another recurring role on Law & Order SVU, and a lot more. She got an honorary doctorate of humane letters from the University of Maryland Eastern Shore and another from Langston University. These days, Pam's life is super chill. She owns a pretty large ranch in Colorado. She drives a big truck, and she's a community activist for local farmers and animal rights. She has a lot of animals, and I think she grows a lot of her own food. She's the spokesperson for Brown Sugar, which is a subscription service dedicated to classic and cult Black films. I have to get this service. I keep meaning to check that out. So I'll definitely get it and check it out. Maybe we can do an episode on it. She was in the sitcom Bless This Mess, which had 2 seasons last year, and she starred in the movie Palm. One thing that I personally think is really cool about Pam, not only does her career span over 4 decades, is that she's continued to be successful and in demand as an older actress. And that's something that's not really common for women her age. I mean, I think that, we have women who are around Pam's age who constantly get roles, but we are always seeing them in the same type of roles. They're always someone's mom or grandmother. But one thing I've noticed about Pam's career is she gets a lot of roles that are dynamic. She's not always playing someone's mom or anything like that. She plays characters that have like a lot of dimension to them and just a variety of characters. That's something that we don't really see a lot for women her age, especially for women who started off playing really sexy roles or like larger than life women or bombshells, like how she was in blaxploitation films. So it's really, really cool to see her, still getting those roles that challenge her. I'm going to end with a quote from Pam about being an older working actress. The tide is changing because people are becoming more authentic. We are shedding a lot of things that didn't matter. We want heart and soul now. A lot of people are afraid of death. If people own it, like I feel good, you survive cancer, divorces, death, your mother's sick, hospice care, etc. I think that's a glow from the inside. If you show that, I don't think nobody cares what your age is. You bring the work and passion. That's what people respond to. I don't have a fear of rejection. Just bring the work, bring the barbecue. So, yes, y'all, that is Pam Grier's story. She is the coolest woman alive, definitely. I am really, really excited about this episode, and I love blaxploitation films. We're definitely going to talk more about them, and I suggest that if you have not seen Foxy or Coffee, you need to go watch them right now, stop working, and go watch them right now. And then you need to get into more Pam Grier films. So I hope you guys like this episode, and I will see y'all next week. Thank you for listening to Vixen. If you liked today's episode, don't forget to leave a review. If you have a submission, feel free to email VIXENPODCAST@gmail.com. We'll be back next week with an all-new episode.